Sometimes God's power moves all by itself. Other times, it waits for a person to act. It's the same presence, but it operates in two dimensions. Today, we're uncovering the mystery of the latent power of God's presence and the channeled power that flows through human vessels. This teaching distinguishes between the inherent, latent power of God's presence and the need for human vessels to channel that presence for miracles and breakthroughs. Understanding this difference will transform how you carry, respect, and release the supernatural power of God in your life. Latent power is the built-in energy of God's presence. Alive, active, and self-sustaining. It moves without human command. Channeled power requires mediation, a person chosen and obedient to act as a vessel for divine flow. Both are God's power, but they manifest in very different ways. God's presence possesses latent power, power that acts independently of human intervention. It is a shield, a weapon, and a source of healing all by itself. When 12 rods were placed before the Lord, no one touched them or prayed over them. Yet Aaron's rod blossomed and bore almonds. That's the power of his presence. Dead things come alive just by being near him. When you dwell in the glory of God, lifeless situations revive. No striving, no formula, just presence. When Saul sent men to capture David, each group entered Samuel's prophetic gathering. The moment they crossed into that holy atmosphere, they fell under the power of God and began to prophesy. Even Saul himself was overcome and stripped of strength. That's what happens when the enemy steps into God's zone of glory. The presence itself becomes an impenetrable shield. When the Philistines placed the ark beside their idol, Dagon, they found their god fallen face down before the ark. The next day, Dagon was shattered, its head and hands broken off. Plagues spread until they returned the ark in fear. Even in captivity, God's presence defended his own glory. That's latent power. Self-sustaining, self-defending, unstoppable. But there's another operation of divine power. When God chooses to work through human vessels, this is the channeled power, where your obedience becomes heaven's point of release. The presence of God was already with Israel, a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. But the sea didn't part until Moses lifted his rod. God said, "Why do you cry to me? Lift up your rod and stretch out your hand." The miracle was waiting for his movement. The power was ready, but it needed a vessel of obedience to direct its flow. In the battle against Amalek, as long as Moses' hands were raised, Israel prevailed. When his hands fell, the enemy advanced. The power didn't weaken, but its channel wavered. Moses' action became the pipeline for victory. Even today, your prayer, your word, your worship can be the key that channels divine intervention. The apostles carried this same principle. Peter's shadow healed the sick. Paul's handkerchiefs cast out spirits. They didn't create power. They channeled it through obedience, holiness, and faith. That's divine partnership. Heaven flowing through humanity. The presence of God is inseparable from holiness. Sin, pride, and worldliness repel his manifestation. To channel his power, we must walk in reverence. God guards his name and his anointing. Casual hearts cannot carry sacred fire. In these end times, understanding how to handle his presence is vital for every believer called to manifest his power. So remember this. 1. The latent power of God protects, revives, and defends on its own. 2. The channeled power flows through obedient vessels to manifest miracles. Holiness attracts his presence. Obedience releases his power. And that's how heaven invades the earth. Which side of God's power speaks to you most? The latent or the channeled? Let us know in the comments below. And if this message stirred your spirit, hit like, subscribe, and share this video to help others discover how to unlock God's power. Stay in his presence and let his power flow through you.